Si todo está bien. Muchísimas gracias. Como mencioné, yo voy a empezar la sesión en español.
As I said, I'm going to start the session in Spanish, but if anyone wants to have any participation or intervention in other languages, please go ahead. I think we're all Spanish speakers, and we will be doing Spanish to English simultaneous interpretation. So thank you very much for being here. For most of us, it's already the night. For some of us, a bit later than to others. And this session on the involvement of citizens, it tells us that these initiatives have seen difficult times in the past year because there were initiatives that would take people out on the streets, and now we're back from the streets to sit in front of our computers. And in that sense, the people who are with us are all real champions of the involvement of civil society and the use of data, even in very complex situations. The interests of the citizens has been eroded by this virtual life in the past year, and this is one of the struggles we're having today. And well, this session is a rather follow-up session to the initiatives that we have seen across in the past months, but also some initiatives that are going to start, such as the one in Guanajuato in Colombia. And we have the chance to have some co-organizers, for instance, the Alliance, the Open Government Partnership, represented by Alonso. I'm sorry, where's Luciano? And Luciano. And we also have Pepe. So we are very happy to have them around, and we have a team dedicated to the initiative of local governments. And we're also very close in agendas, in staff, in objectives. So we believe that this session is particularly close to home. And with no further ado, I would like to, well, move on to the session. So the idea is to start with conversations that we call lightning talks, and these relate to the initiatives and how these have been developed in the countries. We are going to use the prompts we sent. We can take 5 minutes maximum, and I am going to be the toughest timekeeper, so beware. And something we have.
Nos van a ver ellos como los participantes, presentando ágilmente nuestros logros y nuestros proyectos. Pusimos 2 objetivos, 2 metas, 2 lecciones, 2 retos, cualquiera de ellos que quieran.
Sorry, we lost the audio for some seconds. So if you want to present something before the group, well, go ahead. So we're going to start with a group with 3 or 4 initiatives. Then we're going to have a space for quick questions and answers, and then we're going to move on with the rest. So if you have any question, please write them on the chat for us not to interrupt the 5 minutes of each one of the speakers, so that everything can run smoothly. And once we go around this table of initiatives, we're going to pass the floor to Alonso for him to give us his opening remarks. And we're going to talk in a collaborative manner about how we can improve all these initiatives and what we have learned in these past 10 years. And we can also talk about the future of these initiatives, whether they will be relevant in the coming years and what they will look like. So I prepared a Jamboard with little stickers and questions that I'm going to show in a minute. And you can start adding whatever you think of these questions. So it is important to approach the questions of our and the interventions of our speakers today with this in mind. And that would be the last session of tonight. And we are very thankful to each one of you for being here. I will pass the floor to Alonso. for his opening remarks, and then we will move on to our first speaker. Hi, good afternoon, good morning.
Soy muy contento de estar aquí. Nosotros venimos trabajando
I
con
am very happy to be here. We have been working for 10 years. Gift and OJP are celebrating their 10th anniversaries, and we are very happy to be able to collaborate with this group. We have a very interesting one, and we're going to have very interesting conversations and see what we can do in the coming years. So it is not only about giving you the a warm welcome to this session, but also about inviting you to participate actively. Well, thank you, Alonso. I think we can start, and we're going to start with Costa Rica. If you don't mind, Carlos, you can introduce yourself, and well, the floor is yours. Sorry, I was just taking a screenshot of this meeting. Don't worry, we're going to have photos afterward. So, good afternoon, good morning, good night. I represent Innovap, and I am going to tell you about this collaborative laboratory we have here that was fostered by the University of Costa Rica, and we focus on the solving of public problems by means of alternatives that are of great value to the citizens. This laboratory is divided in three areas: innovation of public service, social innovation, and links to development. We focus on data opening, and we focus on the support of public institutions for them to transfer data to the citizens. And well, and by means of the laboratory, we developed the school we already talked about. And in Costa Rica, a few years ago, was number 7 out of 100 in some ratings. So this took us to try to train legal advisors for understanding best the budgeting cycle and also increasing the citizen participation. And like this, we started generating value by means of data. And as regards the objectives we have identified, well, by means of the open budget school, we have seen a promotion of the use of all this data for public policies, and we have promoted the participation and involvement of civil society, and also the understanding that by means of the data use, the citizens can become involved in all processes for having a better transparency. Due to time constraints, I am going to mention only one achievement, one lesson learned, and one challenge. Among the success stories, we can see a great empowerment of the participants in this school. Participants in 2020, when this initiative took place first, could go further than they passed the objectives of this study. And I am sorry, I have just a few seconds left. So among the lessons learned, we identified that there are different processes that have been streamlined, and by means of the experience of the school, the participating citizens have seen and understood the need for knowledge on the budgeting system and cycle has been one of the lessons we have learned. And this has increased the value of this initiative for the creation of spaces. And among the challenges, well, the training process. There are different projects that are in the pipeline, but these are not very, um, but they are complex. So it is important to develop initiatives in order to have a greater impact in the country. One of the goals we had for that year was to increase the participating um, individuals. This is why we are discussing to take the school to the virtual realm in order to reach more people and have more participants and to have interactive spaces where people can see recordings and practical examples of everything they have to learn for this to reach even more people. Thank you. Well, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Carlos is ahead of these time markers. And I am going to leave the links to the Jamboard on the chat and also some context information. Maybe some people among the audience do not know what these initiatives are about. So we have some rules for involvement. And in a few minutes, I'm going to give you a link to other materials that would help us understand the presentation of Carlos. And it would be amazing that as the speakers give their presentations, leaves all that they also leave links on the chat that could help us understand best what their activities are.
Indonesia. Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. We are so glad that we get to now be in the same room, Latin America and our Asian initiatives. So glad to have you here. I see Judy is here, but I don't know if he's gonna be here or it's gonna be risky. Who's gonna speak tonight? While our Indonesian colleagues, probably they're having some issues with their connection, I'll reach out to them independently. If then can our colleagues from Mexico start? I have Suni and Lorena up here. I don't know if you want to, if you already know in which order are you going to participate, but if not, the floor is yours anyhow.
Suni, tú dirás, puedes empezar tú y si quieres yo termino.
Well, Suni, you can start or maybe I can start. Okay, great. So I will try to be as quick as possible for the time not to be up. I have a presentation. It's only 3 slides, just to have some support. So the goals we had this year in terms of citizen involvement were to rethink what we had been doing at the Ministry of Finance in order to do this in these conditions of pandemic, and this forced us to be creative and to join efforts. And in that sense, the objective of this initiative was to adapt to the circumstances of an ever-changing society and to try to explore the amount of data that we have at the portal of budgeting transparency in order to run an analysis and a presentation that would be consumable and understandable by the citizens and also by decision makers who may be interested in this data analysis on what relates to SDGs, because we should actually all be interested in that. As for the lessons learned, well, I think we had many, but the most important were that together we are better, and that the results we had were very satisfactory, not only in terms of the amount of participants, but also in as regards the level of interest that people showed in their activities. And all the collaborators that were part of this effort were very important, and the time they dedicated to follow up on the participants was very valuable. They shared their knowledge and they took care of this seed that we had planted before, and they showed passion to generate evidence about the problems we were trying to discuss. As for the achievements, well, in a few minutes, we will share the link with you. We had a high level of participation, and the quality of the work was the main achievement. As to the challenges, I think among the most important challenges we had today is to try to improve this type of citizen participation exercises, to do them more permanently and not to have them in isolated times throughout the year. So that should be accompanied by a level of commitment, not only on the government level, but also on the level of the civil society, because we have proven that the support of the civil society is very valuable. So this is where I would stop. And this would be some of the great learnings we have had. And I think the last one I would rescue was on the collaborators
Participación del Poder Legislativo nos trajo nuevo
unexpected partnership legislative branch of the state brought a new interest among the participants and also the collaborators, and the fact that we are very close to this new legislation that will be taken into account for the budgeting of the federation. So any of these winners, any of these collaborators or partners would be of great help to our activity. So this is where I would stop. And maybe a bit to complement what Lorena was saying, from our perspective as civil society, I was telling you at this morning, we have civil society organization, which is, I think we're having really bad audio from the participants, so we will do our best to interpret. And it was important to run an analysis and strengthen the technical capacities of the citizens for there to be initiatives in terms of sustainable development. And that's a great objective. I think this has been developed little by little, and also in terms of the number of participants we had, I think, well, that's only a sign of success and the fact of seeing that there are many people committed to building a better world. And a great achievement of this is the outreach we have seen among the organizations with a high level of public influence, because we not only talk about the federal government, but also about the civil society and also international organizations. As Lorena was saying, it is important to establish linkages with the legislative branch, and I think we all value these interactions. And it is important not to have them as isolated but to do this in a joint manner for seeing better results.
I think that there is always a challenge, which is incentives, the monetary incentives, but we also need to know how to give a follow-up to this project so that we won't have only the presentation and that's it. And we know that these are very specific initiatives and that we don't know if these data are mature enough. I mean, the project in itself, we don't know if the project has a maturity to finish that initiative. And we should think about how to have more people involved, to have more political alliances, because this should be more inclusive. We don't know how this could be that way, But those are the challenges that remain. And we should know if we could direct those interests, because we have so many interests and we have many pending issues. Thank you very much, Suni and Lorena. So for those of you who don't have the context, Lorena comes from the Ministry of Finances in Mexico, and Suni works in the civil society in Mexico. So we see this cooperation, which is a very strong cooperation from the civil society and the government, and so many allies from different backgrounds. And I think that's important to highlight it. Actually, it seems like a very coordinated team for this action, and this speaks about a very important coordination. As Lorena has said it, we should speak about how to maintain this kind of collaborations.
That they are probably getting a little bit, we're speaking fast, I guess. So if we can speak a little bit slower, I know, first I tell you, primero les digo hablen rápido, luego les digo hablen lento. I'm sorry for
Yes,
that.
I'm telling you to speak fast and then to speak slow, but this is
understanding each other better, and there is nothing more important than that. Well, now I hear from Rizky from Indonesia that he's ready. So please, Rizky, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aura. Good morning, everyone from Jakarta. Good morning, Juan Pablo. How are you? Morning,
so happy
everyone.
to see you. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you too. So yeah, maybe I'm going to speak about what we have done back in Indonesia during this last 5 years, related with the user initiative engagement. So as you probably may aware that the government of Indonesia have already conducting what we call like a budget competition for the student, especially for the high school student, and it's been established since 2018, and it's increasing across the year, and hopefully we are going to take the same event this year. And actually the registration is already open last month, and the enthusiasm I hope will always maintain as usual. Yeah, but unfortunately back into 2020 we haven't had a chance to organize the data quest event that we used to conduct in 2018 and 2019, because due to the pandemic, yeah, it's too bad for us that we haven't had a chance to organize the data cast event. But luckily this year one of the unit in Ministry of Finance of Indonesia have already managed to organize the data cast event. However, it's only limited with the subnational level. So hopefully next year, when everything is fine, then we are going to take the chance again to conduct the data cast in maybe national level, just as we did in 2018 and 2019. Back in the competition that I said to you earlier in this discussion, in 2021, we are planning to expand the target of the event, not only for the high school student, but it's we are trying to reach the teacher from the economics discipline, that we are maybe we ask them to prepare the teaching materials from for their students, as yeah, maybe how they can draw the attention from the student, and how they explain the budget. That will be our main objectives of this event. So this will be the first year, so I hope it will, yeah, as usual, it will it will increase the engagement from the very early stage of education, maybe. That's our objectives. And also we are conducting the debate competition from the university student. This is the second year actually, and we are hoping that the it will create the awareness of the budget from the level of the university student. Yeah, I think that's all for from Indonesia. Juan Pablo and Aura, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And also, I'll use one of your remaining minutes to mention that even if you underplayed a little bit the fact that you did a subnational level initiative, it was very impressive for us in the GIF network because we got to see that the award event, the award giving event that you organized virtually with the presence of the ministry, Sri Mulyani, had like over a 4,000 number of views, and people were like very excited about it. So yeah, probably you are being too modest, but it's also important to mention that the leadership.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is the right moment for us to shift into the social media platform and digital platform. I think social media is so powerful nowadays. So yeah, I think so.
Well, I just didn't want you to end your say without highlighting that that fact.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I missed the the fact really. Yeah, that's right.
So in this case, high-level endorsement of the initiative has rendered a lot of good engagement, which is something that we've been discussing a lot, how to get more engagement. So our colleagues from Indonesia could probably speak as we go further, or put something in the Jamboard in the link to let us know how do they think they will increase engagement. So now, ahora, me decía Patricia de Bogotá.
Patricia from Bogotá said that she had some connection issues. I don't know if that's still the case. No, she's there. Please go ahead. Thank you very much. I understand that I only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to be brief. So we made for the first time an exercise to explore, and it was a very interesting exercise because we invited the citizens so that they could make a measurement about the Sustainable Development Goals regarding 3 categories. One category was about equality of opportunities, the other category was sustainability, and the other category was gender equality. It was the first time that we made this process, and we had more people in the group of inequality of opportunities. For us, that process was very valuable because we learned so many things. It was the first time that we had this fiscal transparency subject, and we had many lessons learned, and we wanted to share them with you. We opened up that space to have those analyses. So we assessed these activities, we made the call, and we had these people who registered, and we started working with those teams and with those groups of people, and there's a need to strengthen the capacity of analyzing budgeting figures. So we found out that within those groups, we had 5 highlighted points, and one person won the presentation and the creative way of making this analysis, and that was very important for us. But what I could highlight from that process is that those results that we had thought that many people were going to register and that many people were going to participate in this analysis. But actually, the citizens don't understand the way in which the information is presented to them, and they don't understand the budgeting jargon, which is extremely technical. And even when we understand that jargon and those technical words, people don't understand the process of the budget chain. And even when people understand the budgeting chain, they don't really understand the contracting process. So that's the experience that we had. It was precisely to strengthen those capacities in the citizens so that they would be able to analyze the budgeting information. We also planned everything, and then we launched that call for a profile which was more academic. When the universities were on vacation, so it was like, oops, you know, of course, when students came back, they said, hey, we want to participate. And then we said, oh, but we have already closed the applications. I said, oh my God, we have already closed the applications. So I don't want to make that like in a very formal way, because I think that we have some lessons learned that we could share. And we said, okay, this is not going to happen to us again. Because we opened, an academic call during the school holidays. So that was one of the most important processes that we had. And we kept working with those teams. We said, okay, let's publish it on the social media. We said, okay, let's give a gift certificate. And let's say that, we're going to give that so that people will be motivated to participate. Oh my God. So that was like my comment in general terms. So that was during the full process. We're going to do some VIP tours around our work so that people can get to know the projects, and we can do it for different businesses and entrepreneurs, and we can work with the private sector, and we can have those tours in that zone. And we finished, and we're going to finish in September. So that's for us to have the information. We're going to have this accompaniment so that we can explain how the contracting procedures work. Thank you very much, Patricia, for this comment that was so entertaining also, and this helps us a lot. And this is aligned to the gift network and how we liked those publications. We said that since it is so late, we should have a refreshing drink at least to help to have a smoother conversation. It is worth mentioning that we need to highlight the learning from a new member. And for example, Chile had the same experience. We started having this initiative in the International Day of Open Data. Manuel Casanova, who organizes the event in Mexico, is there. And when they presented it to the rest of the countries, well, in Chile, it was summer. So they were about to launch it, and they realized that nobody had enrolled. And then they started launching new initiatives. So this happens to all of us. And also Suni has raised her hand, so we're going to give her the floor so that she can tell us what she's laughing about. And I would like to make a us. I mean, we have this very joyful vibe, and I think that we can make questions and have the answers. And I would like to hear especially those who haven't participated yet. And our colleagues from OGP who are not involved in these sessions generally. So perhaps they could make some comments about what they have observed from the colleagues in the region, as well as the other participants. So we're going to give the floor to Suni, and everybody has respected time, so congratulations, just as Patricia has mentioned. Just imagine that I said to the university students, you have to do a work and you're not going to receive any points. And of course, they're going to say that they don't want to do it because they don't want to spend those hours working and studying. But we need to really reflect on the incentives. And of course, we have some lessons from every country. I think that it is a pleasure to see that we have more and more participants and to see everything that we have learned. But I suppose that the situation happened to all of us in our first mission. Yes, we had 40 groups, but we wanted more. Juan Pablo, please. Go ahead. Thank you. I would like to celebrate this freshness of this anecdote and Patricia's laughter, and I would like to highlight that. What can help us to anticipate those situations is what the OGP friends call the communication with the potential users. Those processes that are initiated as an adventure, as an initiative with a lot of good intentions, can find those obstacles that can be solved. Not because of the experience, but because it will get incorporated in the organization and in the dialogue. And we can invite also the civil society colleagues. But the way to tell that story was really fun. Thank you very much. I would like to wait for another reaction, especially from our co-hosts.
So I think in time you know when and where are holidays, when to work. I mean, we had some colleagues from Guatemala who love doing stuff at 7 a.m., which in Mexico would never work. In Mexico, if you give an appointment before 7, no one's going to show up. Or colleagues from Panama, we were actually chatting and talking about different experiences with OJP. And Panama has just supported this new commitment that is going to be launched on Tuesday and on budgeting, and you start becoming sensitive to the global trends. And for instance, when our colleagues in Europe say in summer you don't do anything, and then we say, okay, it's summer in Europe, but in South America everyone's freezing and no one's on holiday. So that's the thing. And we're also on our 10th anniversary, and we're going to launch an improved version of our co-creation standards, as Juan Pablo was saying, which is a more simple one. And something very important beyond when we have holidays or not, the budgetary cycles affect the possibility to establish a commitment. So we're going to submit this to a global consultation as of the third week of September. And the idea is to have more flexible timeframes that adapt to the budgeting cycles of the 78 countries and any other country. And the budgets are defined in July or June, and if they have different processes and these are defined in April, well, we will try to adapt, to better adapt and define the political priorities, which is a very important topic. Pepe, who is here, is our senior coordinator for North, Central, and Caribbean, North Central America and the Caribbean. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Panama and the work with support of the GIF colleagues. Hi, thank you very much. In Panama, they're very focused on budget transparency, especially with the methodology of open budget survey. But the most important thing of this pilot is this opened the door in order to introduce a component of citizen participation, maybe as something that lays a foundation for participatory budgeting. And this is what came across as shaking to the government, but it all worked well thanks to the accompaniment of Aura and of GIF in general. And every time we had anything, any request coming from the civil society, there was actual support and we could actually establish commitments. So really, thank you very much, GIF, for your support. Thank you, Pepe. But actually, on this table, what is very clear is that the civil society and the finance ministries should actually understand each other and talk. There's no reason why not. So Mexico left this very clear with this wonderful duet. And also Patricia from Bogota, she was very clear about it. And I would like to follow up on our participations. I think we are doing very well so far. So just as we started with this first intervention of national governments who are already implementing and have their first 40 groups, I mean, this sounds like too little, but this all happened during the vacation time. So I really want to see what these results will be, and especially to see where this conversation will lead tonight in terms of the impact, as Sonny mentioned. And this is actually the challenge of these initiatives, that is to think how we're going to launch this observation to the citizenship and to bring this to an actual participation in the budgetary process. Now we're going to go to a subnational government, Guanajuato in Mexico. They're only starting, and you're going to see that they are, just as Bogota, they are making use of all the knowledge of this network, and they're doing it real Guanajuato style for creating a data exploration center. Well, thank you very much. And I would like to present you with the topic. As a matter of fact, we are very happy. We are a few minutes, maybe 1 hour away from launching this rally. And on social media, the first step is to invite people to follow us on August the 30th virtually. And that's the official request for support to give. Yeah, with this rally, we have high expectations of this for this, and we know that this edition in Mexico already happened in the past. So this is why we have we see the map of the state of Guanajuato. This is each one of the stages that represents something very representative of the state. We have the Cervantino Festival. We have the city of Allende, which is an international icon. The independence linked to Miguel Hidalgo, and also Olga Costa, who is a representative of gender equality, and also Gacela, the green one, which represents the participation of women in sports. So these are the 5 steps of the rally, and this is dedicated to working with university students. So we're going to take any kind of students from any discipline in order to show that our portal is useful to any type of citizens. So we're not only dedicating or directing this to our population who has knowledge of economy, but actually to any type of users. And this is why this rally is open to all students from all disciplines. And the idea is that they look for information in on our website as regards SDGs, territoriality, and geo-referencing of public works, identifying challenges and opportunities that can be proposals for public policies. So creativity is something very important in this case. And of course, they are university students. We have to adapt to the system. So everything is going to happen on the social media where their publications and reposts will get extra points in this rally in order to generate and trigger some participation on social media. And we're calling on all universities, both public and private, to have a high level of participation. It is important to look at the portal. It's almost new. It hasn't even been 1 year since we launched it. And it is very important to, as I mentioned in a few minutes ago, to underline the relevance of our website. For Guanajuato, it is the first time we have such a portal. It is the first time we launch something like this, and we know the challenge is big. But as you were saying, budgetary data are not the most appealing to all kinds of public. These are rather technical. And this is why we want to leverage the participation of students on social media, where we have an opinion for everything and we're experts about everything. And it is important to have true and reliable information to participate in conversations and to engage in discussions. So it is important to make sure that all these activities are triggers of discussions, but with proper arguments. And the fact of telling a student, okay, this is an international thing, I mean, this draws the attention. So I actually didn't pay my rent, my water service, my electricity in order to buy this world prize for incentivizing the participants. No, I'm just kidding, but this is a very important project for us, and we're looking for better alternatives for communication. And I am leaving the link of the portal and also the Facebook link. And if you can disseminate this, we're going to be very thankful. How are we going to improve? Well, we're going to take the data to the citizens. We're not going to wait for the citizen to come to the data, but rather bring data to the citizens. And this will help us.
No es fácil, sabemos que no va a ser fácil,
this budgetary literacy among the population. This is not going to be easy, but we know this is a good initiative. And in order to move forward, we want to emphasize the fact that these types of panels help us strengthen the activities. And some people in Mexico told us that they were going to do this in May and June, and we had to wait all until last week in order for students to be in school or in universities and for this to work. This is the first one, and we hope that in 10 years we will tell you of great experiences, and we will keep on working on this project to go beyond. Well, thank you very much, Erika. Congratulations, and we are waiting to see the results. As you know, the idea is that at the end of the year, we can all present the winning projects at the Global Summit of Open Government in order to present the different achievements of these initiatives and follow up on them. So I'm very excited to see what Guanajuato is bringing to the world. And it is very interesting that you used local icons, local figures that are actual references for people in the local level. And it is important to bring this to the local level, to the local understanding. So if I were from Guanajuato, I would know that this is made for me. I have never been to Guanajuato. Well, you can come. I mean, you can come on Monday, so you can make it if you leave now. Well, so now I would like to pass the floor to the next participant. We are closing the with the participation of Erica, we're closing the issue of initiatives and the facilitation by gift of all these experiences that you're having. So with Erica's intervention, we end this part of the meeting, but now by means of the service we run prior to this event, we would like to hear what other countries are implementing, and if they are not implementing these strategies, what they are doing. So this is why we have both Brazil with Giselle, and maybe Breno can also say something, and also Chile, who just collapsed, but they should be back soon. So let's start with Giselle. In Spanish or English, as you wish. So I'm going to try Portuñol. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I am really happy to be here with you in such an important celebration of the GIFT network. I actually prepared a presentation in order to support. I think you can see it, right? Great. So I am a researcher, the main researcher of a group at the University of São Paulo in Brazil. And we developed an innovation both for the opening of data with governments and also tools for citizen participation. So more than 9 years ago, we started working on different initiatives for budgetary transparency, and I wanted to present you with two projects. One is Caring for My Neighborhood, Cuidando Meu Bairro in Portuguese, and this is a project that presents the public expenditure in a geolocalized way, because we were trying to translate the information, and sometimes it is very hermetic for most people and very secret. So this portal, this tool, is seeking for open data in the Intendancy of São Paulo. This brings it online, brings them online, and does it in a localized way. We also combine this with a tool in order to generate information request anonymously, because in Brazil you cannot do these kinds of requests without showing your ID. So we actually tried to hide the identity of people who want details on budgets, for instance, and yeah, and this when people need some information from the public institutions. On the right, we have another project, which is Monitorando a Cidade, Promise Tracker, and this was developed together with our allies at the MIT. this has three components. First, methodology for the creation of data collection, a technological platform for designing instruments on any topics, not only budgeting, but any other topic that is of interest. And the application, it's a mobile app for people to collect data in their territories. So these are two projects, and we have the interface of Cuidando do Meu Bairro, caring for my neighborhood. And this data change in real time. This is why we think it is very important that citizens become involved with the topic in their own cities and to translate the budgeting in a more tangible way. So these data are exactly for the citizens to accompany the budgetary execution on a daily basis. And if the information is not doesn't have the quality required, it is very easy to request further details. On the other hand, we have monitoring the city, monitorando a cidade. And this is when there are no public data, no sufficient public data on a topic. For instance, we have some students who are collecting information on the water quality. Here we have some citizens who are collecting information on the infrastructure conditions of the city. And we also have some examples that we developed jointly with CJU, who is also here, for students to monitor the quality of school canteens, the food in school canteens. So these are two projects that are actually seeking to complement and create a toolkit of for transparency in budgetary situations as relates to the budget, and how to bring the citizens close to this. And if there are no public data, how the citizenship can collaborate with the collection of data. We have some lessons learned, some achievements. So it has been 10 years, well, almost 10 years, and we have managed to leverage great support from the private sector, from the government, from academic institutions in Brazil and also internationally. And for us, it is a matter for great pride to see the development of the community, and also some initiatives that added more than supported more than 5,000 people nationally. We involved 10 states in our federation. So for us, it was a very difficult time because we actually believed in the power of being in the territory and to look at this closely. And here we have data rallies in school, on the street, and centers for the elderly. And the importance of or some of the learnings of the pandemic was that we understood the importance of the face-to-face learning, because now we have the challenge that many people do not have the conditions to go online, for instance, or to extract data, or to become involved with the discussion of different topics. So that was actually quite hard. And now when schools start opening in Brazil and all the activities will resume their normal track, well, it is important to be in contact with the subnational governments in Brazil in order to continue developing these initiatives. I think I don't have enough time, so we should be closing now. I think my time is over, but I think we are an institution, a public institution for teaching and research. So the issue of sustainability and scalability is fundamental.
I would like to speak about the different municipalities. We have more than 5,000 municipalities in Brazil, and so that is linked to the quality of the environment, the air, water. We need to have the budgeting data, among others. So that's it from me. Thank you very much. And I will be waiting for your comments. Thank you very much, Giselle. And I think that we see one of the challenges of civil society regarding the data management and how to tackle the situation that once they had achieved to have this social monitoring, now that we're back to the virtual life, how can we reduce that impact? I'm going to let Brennan tell us if he wants to react. Please tell us if you want to react, Breno. Yes. I feel so well. And I was listening to the projects, and especially the monitoring projects in the cities. I work in CGU, which is a general control office in Brazil. We have been working with national monitoring. I wanted to speak a little bit about the experience. It is very important to take the students to the schools. I mean, we need to speak about these subjects. If they can participate, they can have access to the data from the government to provide a quality service, and more important than data. From this experience, I think that the information to the young kids, that they can monitor the quality of the service that is provided by the government. This was a very good experience. CU is working in the schools. And we're working on the city monitoring. We are translating these kind of experiences for young kids. It is a very big challenge. It is done in many cities. And we have the experience of projects like the one Giselle presented, which is very important for us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Breno. Welcome. And thanks to the representative of this office in the GIFT network. We are going to answer a question from Luciana, and then we're going to close these presentations. I have a brief comment. First of all, according to the agreement of data, the important part is the service, the way in which these data will become a service for the citizens. And afterwards, I'd like to highlight the commitment done by Colombia in the last action plan, which has to do with what Breno said. It is an analysis of the budget, but it is a transversal analysis in those subjects mentioned. The health emergency, for example, and we know that we can implement it, and it could be a good example and that this can become something useful for a specific subject. And speaking about the distances, going from the most general part about budget. But I think that at the end of the day, it has that common aspect. That's it. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Luciana. Claro, sí, la verdad
Thank
es
you
que
very much, Luciana. Yes, it is true that having this link between the commitments done in this kind of initiatives and the framework of the Alliance for the government, well, I mean, we have seen this synergy throughout the years. We have seen the commitments done to have this alliance in this background that had made us have this first encounter to share data in Colombia. They had this first encounter and they had the specific commitment that we have had to take action towards an open government. And in Mexico, this was born from the intent to have this data published. And it has costed a lot to have those data. So we needed to use them. And we've had that synergy throughout the years in that sense. I'd like to give the floor to the last speaker so that he can share the reflection and collaboration. And Slaven from Chile, who's going to tell us his experience, even if Chile has not been incorporated to the specific initiatives. That doesn't mean that the ministry is not doing some inclusive actions, as he's going to tell us. So we have many different ways of speaking about it. So he's going to tell us about this kind of initiatives done. And Slaven, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good evening. I'm sorry that I joined late this meeting. I know that I have the recording to keep up to date. I'd like to tell you about 3 initiatives that I'm going to mention very briefly. Please wait a second. Okay, there's a piano over there. We have 3 initiatives. The first one has to do with the user engagement and data work or data management. It is a platform that is an open platform that has been implemented since 2019. And even if external users are using it, it has been a huge challenge for the budgeting planning in the most traditional way. So we have that platform with hard data reported permanently. For those of us who are more traditional, this makes more complicated the final reports. I mean, this generates a permanent tension. There is a permanent scrutiny because we need to have it real time and at a transactional level. As we said it before, this can allow a better review, a better surveillance, because we know that we've been observed at every moment. It's like being in a restaurant. Everybody needs to be aligned. So here we have more details about 2 initiatives that have to do not with citizen involvement in the sense of the work that we've done, but it has to do with their contribution in terms of the decisions made. The first one is the report of the taxpayer. This had many elements of participation in its generation, the idea, and how it was done. First of all, it is a proposal of the Commission that with the Ministry of Finances in 2020, when we didn't know that the pandemic was going to happen. I mean, we knew that some things were going on in China, but despite all of it, the first recommendation had to be implemented during the first months. It was meant to have a personalized report of the taxes paid by the taxpayers, jointly with the report of reimbursements. That was made in a very short period. It was a period of 4 months maximum. And it had to be implemented during those 4 months in the public sector. And we went above all of those people who said that it was not possible to do that. Because it was possible and we did it. But it wasn't done in an authoritarian way. Actually, this concept was done by a unity of the government who tested different reporting mechanisms. They had to check which one worked better. They tested many formats, and they tested them with a control group with different users. And it was with the control group that they could do the correct format, and that was the one delivered to the population in May. They had some participation stages that was direct and aware from the initial stages. We had the report and we checked, we verified which report worked better. In 2021, this process was repeated. And we understand and we want to institutionalize it and go ahead. That's my first experience that I wanted to tell you. And the second experience belongs to the macroeconomics world. So I completely focus on the microeconomics, but for some things. But in this case, we're going to speak about macroeconomics. Since 2018, we have established by the law a council that reviews the parameters of the expenses, the elasticity. It is a very specialized body that will review the budget of the agencies. I'm sorry we lost him. We lost his audio. And this will go through a review. There is a possibility that exists, but it is not a demand. About collecting opinions from the citizenship, either they are experts or not. This year, we've done the first two analyses. So we've done the modifications that are presented, and they will be reviewed. They will be available for the citizenships. We are not expecting to have too many comments because those are very technical information, but the fact of having in the web all of this information and saying, okay, this is the long-term information, etc., and having all of the transparency. We can ask those people, okay, how do you see this presentation? How would you complete this information? What do you think about it? And so we have the explanations, the necessary explanations. That will fulfill a role in terms of trust, of knowledge of what has to be done in the usage of fiscal policies. But it also demands from us to be more rigorous and more aware of what we're doing and explaining what we do and justify what we do. So this has a double effect. The trust and participation, and the other effect is the internal demand. Thank you so much. It is true that you have many mechanisms. We have these citizen documents, and we see many innovative champions, also the city of Guanajuato, that presented and did the transparency portal in only 6 months. And they have gathered photos, etc. So this is the proof that when we have the will, it is possible to do those things. And thank you very much for speaking about the other mechanisms. In the gift network, we accompany those processes of budget and public expenses. I'm going to send you the link of our report. And I'd like to thank you for your interest. Now I'd like to take a moment to take a photo. So please turn on your cameras. And then if you can stay for the Jamboard reflection, I would really thank you. I thought you were going to invite us to drink a tequila. I only have water. I'm sorry, but I swear I had thought about it. So cheers with water. Mine doesn't look good, but I swear it is only water. Okay, let's take the picture. 1, 2, 3. For the ones in the second screen, 1, 2, 3. Hey, Pepe, once again. Pepe, come back. Where do you live? Okay, great. We had a seaside. Okay, because he has some dogs and he needs to walk them out. Yes, because he has a piano and he has many kids. And when he mentioned that he had a piano in his house, I said, hey, that's great. Perhaps he could accompany us during the presentation. Thank you so much. I'm going to share the Jamboard. Your comments were excellent. If you have any specific comments, please go ahead. You don't need to raise your hands.
Los minutos que tenemos juntos hoy para hablar de estos temas que la verdad son nuestros favoritos.
So it is important to talk about these topics. These are our favorite topics, and we bring the information that we work so hard to harmonize, to complete, for which we make decisions. And people at the end of the day deserve to know how everything's spent, and people need the power to choose. So I will let Alonso to guide us through this. And please, Slaven, if you have any link, please leave them on the chat. And please go ahead. Well, thank you. I think we have a group of people that allows us to have better dialogue. I have used Jamboard, and I think it could be very useful in order to incorporate ideas and to reflect upon things.
Que lo que están poniendo, están pensando.
But before we go on, I think that
Y creo que, o sea, especialmente si pensamos en los siguientes 10 años,
we have to think of the next 10 years, and we have to be more ambitious, because everything I read right now is seen with a perspective of today. But we have to think to the future, and I would expect that this would change a lot in the coming 10 years. It hasn't always been a challenge to interact with people. Back in the day, we had to see how we could involve students, university students, and other types of people. But maybe I'm just saying things an old man would say, but why could we not ask Siri or Alexa or Google, hey, how is my government spending money? Could we think something like that? Could we think about something like that? Or maybe focus our efforts for involvement for tax paying, for instance. You want to know how the government is spending this 30–40% I'm paying. Why not to think about that? So it is important to think about mechanisms that go beyond expense table. And it is important to see how we get to people. So in this respect, the local government is very important. And the deeper we delve in what people think, what people question, and if someone sees a broken lamp on the street or street lighting, they can wonder, okay, what is the government spending? Why is this broken? How much of my taxes are dedicated to the maintenance of the public space? And people are very highly involved. So I'm just dropping general comments, but I think that this very interesting group of champions for fiscal opening, well, I think it is the right context to invite you and to invite other people to first improve the involvement and to think what is next. And let's think of involving, for instance, universities. I have been working with this topic for a long time, and we have made great progress. Do not misunderstand me. But the first time I analyzed a budget of a government agency, and when we requested the information, they sent us a fax, because we requested everything by hand, in paper. So I hope that in the past years, no one here has entered anything by hand. I mean, nowadays you have to explain to us what a fax is, like who uses a fax? Well, that's true. I mean, we know what a fax is, okay?
Pero fue hace 10 años.
Well, but it was 10 years ago.
Faxes.
Faxes were already outdated.
Fue una
So
cosa
that
muy
was
inimaginable.
rather shocking, I must say.
Yo les diría, levanten la mano
So I would say, oh, okay,
y
raise your hands and
ustedes.
let's have a conversation. We have a couple of minutes to think and let's focus on these questions. How do we improve engagement
Avanzamos.
and how to move forward?
Por ahí veo que ponen colegas
I see
India,
something that colleagues from Indonesia
mejorar la
are
información,
introducing as regards information, the establishment of goals,
jóvenes,
the development of actions for
más capacitados.
children and youth,
Trabajar con grupos de vecinos es
training,
importante y es algo que
working
se
with
hace
groups is something
bastante tiempo.
very important.
O trabajar en esto también así lo comenta en el Jamboard. A la hora que empezamos a hablar
When we started talking about open data
mucho más importante, ¿no? Si decimos
seriously, they
publicidad,
became something very important. If we publish data, we just publish things on feminicide, on gender. Well, that makes data more important. But if you just publish data, general data about everything, people are not going to read it. So it is very important to consider this. Raquel, did you raise your hand? Go ahead.
Yes, I did. This conversation is making me quite nostalgic. In South Africa, when we launched Vulekamali, which was our portal, what we did is we engaged from the beginning. We brought civil society into the room, and we did it in direct partnership, and that was so valuable because we set the objectives together. So from the Ministry of Finance, we set the objectives with civil society, and then we went out to communities to engage with them directly. And in so doing, because we had civil society partners around the room, it was a lot easier to do because they essentially got the right people in the room. We used universities quite a lot. So we used to go to the universities, and we found that it was quite easy to get people in the room. You know, we just bring pizza and Coke, and the people would show up. They'd show up with brilliant ideas. They were so engaging, so energetic. And I think in the beginning it was quite scary from a Ministry of Finance perspective to open up the doors so widely. But then it was actually so helpful. It made our lives so much easier to have, you know, that constant presence of civil society, and we could raise ideas. We had such an open forum that it was great. You know, anyone could raise ideas, they could make decisions, we could make decisions. And at the end of the day, we all took collective responsibility for what happened. And most of the things that did happen were extremely positive. And we landed up with the portal that I think responded to people's needs a lot more than if it had just been from the Ministry of Finance doing it alone. So I just thought I'd share that little bit from the South African perspective.
Thank you, Raquel. Lorena, de Secretaría de Hacienda México.
Lorena from the Finance Ministry of Mexico. Well, I think that we also had this learning in this new edition, and I think one of the things we noticed were that citizens do want to participate. They are interested. There are topics that concern them, be it security, environment, gender, but sometimes they're intimidated by the way we present the data to them. Wrongly, when we do it too technically, and both in terms of the information available and also as regards the use they can have of the data. And we actually thought of connecting with people who were not experts in these data issues, and it was actually people who didn't have anything, who didn't know anything, who made it to the end and won. And we saw that there was a big shift, a big change of course, having said, okay, I have never participated in such a process, I have never managed a database, and then suddenly they presented a winning proposal. So this was something amazing. We allowed them to express their concern and see the way they wanted to work. And also it was very important to consider that were they felt they felt very accompanied, very supported. And in addition to the prize, they could learn from experts who came to explain to them with a citizen language, with a normal language, not such a technical language. Thank you, Lorena. Roberto, can you tell us a bit more about the comment you left? Because I think this relates very much to what Lorena just said. Well, one of the challenges we have found here is that the analysis of resources is too technical, and this doesn't get to the common citizen who is worried about whether they have an employment, whether they will eat, how they will manage or sort out criminality. So it was very important to remember that these analyses are sometimes irrelevant to people. For instance, whether we have an 8% deficit, whether there's transparency or not, there are people who are struggling to eat or to maintain their employment. So it is very important to consider this and to see how important data are for triggering change. We use comics, we use TikTok, we use YouTube, and all these new instruments, audiovisual instruments, because at least here people do not read more than a page. So we have to engage in social media to make our ideas come across. Well, totally agree, Roberto. I think it is very important to use the media. And when we talk about millions and millions of pesos, of dollars, of reais, it is very complicated to understand what this data, this information means to me. Well, I think we are running out of time, so should we move on to the second round of questions and answers? Or just to finish here, is there anyone who would like to add anything on how to improve the involvement and what we should be doing? Well, I moved on to the second one, but I wanted to retake your comment in order to pass to the next table. So in our morning session that we had on communication, we also talked about this subject. That is, we talked with the Ministry of Finance in Argentina, and we wondered whether the future will be asking things to the internet. So is it important to generate data that allow technologies to become interactive with the people? And it is very important to take this into account because the private sector knows that data are not used for, not all technologies are used for the citizens, that there are technologies that are used for other purposes. So we talked about city, it would be amazing to say, hey, Google, I need this or that from the Ministry of Finance. And are we imagining what it will be like in 10 years or what we would like to achieve in 10 years? This group has proven that in 4 months, in 6 months, one would take 10 or 20 years otherwise or elsewhere. So I would like to imagine what we would be doing in 10 years if we keep on working like this. Well, that I totally agree. And I believe that communication is a very powerful tool. And part of the Brexit success was having a banner saying the European Union is costing 250 million euros every day or something. It was like it was not even a correct figure or a correct amount. So it is important to think of the power of disinformation campaigns. So we can also think about what we need, how we imagine the future, and well, go ahead, Celia. It could be a bit polemic, but I
Yo creo
do
que
not believe in auditors. I think the citizens really become involved when they see that there are ways to change the situation. So I see young people or young teenagers who are very interested in following up on public expenditure and public acquisitions. And for instance, also the fact of children not having access to food in school, which is by law something they should have. And it is important to think about rights, about democracy, about how we can look at the foundations of a society that should be more equal. I see in these processes, it is very important to involve the Ministry of Education, the universities, all of the teaching institutions, because if we really want to do something for the future, we have to start now laying the foundations for that. And I see many people from monitoring organs, fiscal auditors, but I am worried not to see many people from the academia here and in these initiatives.
Sí, no, totalmente coincido que necesitamos empezar a presentar
I do agree that we have to learn how to best present what we have to do, because audit report is read by very few people. It will never reach a broader audience. So, and unless it goes on the first pages of the newspaper.
Anybody else will still have a good amount of time to think about what we could do during these 10 years.
¿Qué tal que sale por ahí una aplicación que refleje datos
There's an
incorrectos?
application that could reflect the data.
Innovar, Carlos, adelante.
Costa Rica, Innovap, Carlos, go ahead.
Ahorita estamos trabajando en visualizaciones
Following this subject line, we keep working on this project so that people can see what the Ministry of Finances do. And I mean, the expenses that they have, how we use the Costa Rican money, and how it was mentioned before, how to use these platforms for the people. And in Costa Rica, we think that they're going to learn better if they can visualize everything. And I think that's better than with an audit, for example.
Lorena, adelante.
Yes, I completely agree. Lorena, please go ahead. I would like to comment on what Giselle said. I think that the citizens, when they have a subject that really has an impact on them or that worries them, won't be misled by the information or the misinformation that exists everywhere. I think that precisely some of those biases that we have from the technical point of view, those biases on the citizens, that we should, remove those biases, that we cannot reach the citizens.
en esos lugares comunes.
I think that we have all been there. We have thought that the citizens won't have the capacity to do that. We believe that we should aspire with those initiatives of citizens' participation is to make them as simple as possible, but accessibility doesn't mean that we should reduce this, because we think that the citizen doesn't have the intellectual capacity to understand what the government is doing, or if they're having this direct purchases. So the citizens know that. And I imagine that these exercises of citizen participation have to do with the legitimacy that we will achieve when implementing these programs. The citizens will get involved at a greater or lower level if they see that the government is also involved. If they see that this project, this exercise, has a lot of communication and that we are making an effort, well, that means that we will have a greater participation of citizens. So we need to generate legitimacy when doing these exercises. And it will be very normal to have citizen participation, not only related to budgeting, but also in subjects of education, health, transportation, etc. So that's how we imagine from our team. And we have designed many ideas for the citizen participation. And we should always answer with that legitimacy that we are interested by those topics that we have, like sustainable development, gender, etc. And they should see that these are not projects just to communicate what we do. It is to create a datum. Thank you very much, Lorena. I completely agree with you. In OGP, when doing this process, we measure something that we called recent response. That has to do with the efficacy of the design. That's what you said. The number of participants will depend on the methodology used, but we need to respond to the expressed needs. So I think that that's your proposal. We should use these 10 years of data that we have in this alliance. Juan Pablo, please go ahead. Thank you. Two comments about those huge challenges for the next decade. The first one has to do with the impact of technologies and with our way to learn and to remember and to exhibit. I believe that we could have some answers to many questions that we have and that we can make. But I also think that the undervalued analysis of a journalistic article from a ministry, I think that we will have less citizens than those that we have today, because we're not going to be well known. So this is a big challenge for us, as we have already said it. How can we communicate and how can we translate this information in a way that it will be true information and adequate information, and that will inform the listener or the user? And this could be subject to manipulations. It is true that an informed user can distinguish between those two types of information, but we need to be more careful because we're going to be having a different way of learning and remembering. Another challenge, and I'm not optimistic, is the fact that we need to defend civic rights and we need to defend democratic institutions. I think that those of us who have worked for years to build that are going to face these years of defending them. And I'm not sure that we're going to be successful on that. The work that we need to do to the right of participation and the need of inclusion and the access to information, that's something that we haven't won. We need to conquer it constantly, and it will require more work. To sum it up, the construction of informed citizens is still a fight. And to have a democratic state, we need to be very resilient. And we need to have this coordination and this democratic base. So that's what I would like to say, because we have a minority that manipulates, that creates confusion. And we don't need to be in Mexico or Guatemala or Salvador or Brazil or in every country where we are located. It also happens in the United States. So I also believe that we should be ready for all of these. And this is going to take long. This fight that we have will take our whole life. I don't want to be pessimistic. Thank you so much, Juan Pablo. I believe that it is not pessimism, it is realism. Afghanistan was a democratic or a free country, and just look at what happened in just 2 weeks. That is an extreme case, of course, but there's the authoritarian part, which is extremely efficient. You can see that. We have seen that in countries in the Americas, in Europe, in the United States, in Asia. It works. Oh, that's so horrible to finish this conference with such a tone.
Juan Pablo is buying us all beers.
It would be my pleasure if it was possible, and we're gonna do it. Let's end with that note of extreme optimism. We are not alone in this set of concerns and of appreciations of the challenges before the future. And we have overcome terrible and very difficult challenges. We just need to be ready to act together, to learn from each other, to support each other, and to be vigilant because, as we always say, this is a task that does not allow you to take a very long break. Short ones, yes.
Muchísimas gracias. Perdón, Lorena quería mencionar algo.
I think that Lorena wanted to mention something. Please go ahead. I only wanted to keep on that note. I think that we have all faced what Juan Pablo mentioned before, but it is thanks to the public servants and the citizens that we keep fighting, and that sometimes we can convince those who are not really convinced that we have to keep working with more transparency and more public participation. I have experienced that, and I think that we should also share those ways in which we can go against that trend. Okay, thank you very much, Lorena. Indeed, we all know that this race is like the Olympic Games. We have the marathon, the gymnastics, and we need to be very flexible, but we also need to be very fast, but we also need to be very resistant, and we need to throw balls very far away. So this comparison with the Olympic Games. I mean, you know, it is not about just finishing it. It is about keeping training. So I'd like to thank the Olympic team that we have. Thank you very much, Alonso, for your participation. Thanks so much to the gold medals that we have in this table and everywhere. And I know that the Olympic Games, you know, are not in trend anymore, but this was so inspiring. Yes, this trend, it still is a trend because we have the Paralympics that can inspire us the most. And we have another lesson. If you do not surrender, well, we can keep going ahead. So thank you very much for your time, for spending this part of your evening with us. And we hope that we can gather in one of our beautiful countries and we can have that tequila. So see you and thank you so much and see you tomorrow. Thank you. Good night. Good night, everyone.
Ahora sí a descansar, equipo. Let's go take a break. Gracias, Albertina.
No, de nada.